views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to writers and editors and journalists and videographers and photographers and filmmakers. And in this case, I got to get it, authors. We have an author of a book about the Bronx. And the idea is just to let you see what people who put stuff out are thinking. And we'll start off this evening with my buddy Jeff Coltin from City and State, New York. He's calling while he's on vacation. Gotta love it. That's dedication. Nice to have you with us, Jeff. Always great to talk to you.
Yeah, happy to be back. And hey, that's the thing about working remotely. You can work from anywhere now.
From anywhere, yeah. We got you on vacation. Anyway, but really, this is a really perfect week to have you with us because City and State New York put out its Bronx issue. Your cover story about the Bronx Democratic Party was fascinating, and certainly I'm pleased that I was selected to be in the Bronx Power 100. Let's start with the Bronx Democratic Party. You very correctly analyzed this is to some degree a watershed moment. There is a something happening. Gustavo Rivera, Senator Rivera, who's often been critical of the party, was quoted in your article as saying, don't call it a machine anymore, call it an organization. That starts to suggest some big things. Tell me about your understanding and your analysis of where the Democratic Party in the Bronx is at.
Yeah, I mean, what's most interesting is who the party supported in these 2021 primaries that just completed. And first of all, the Bronx Democrats endorsed 9 city council candidates, and all 9 of them won. So just the fact that a county organization is having success in the year 2021 is impressive because we've seen county organizations in Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan all really weakened. But the Bronx had that success by endorsing and supporting candidates that traditionally the Bronx Democratic Party probably wouldn't have supported. It's a lot of women. It's a lot of younger candidates. If I recall, 7 of the 9 incoming city council members are in their 30s. Just a much younger incoming class we've seen. Yeah. Yes, 5 out of the 9 are women, and some of them are pretty progressive, and they were taking on, I mean, just one example is we see with Althea Stevens in the West Bronx. She's going to be taking over for Vanessa Gibson. She doesn't have too much of a history in local politics, and she was taking on Yves Phileas, former political director for the Bronx Dems. You would think the Bronx Dems would go ahead and support a former political director, somebody who was an insider in the party, but no, they chose Althea Stevens, who is she's in her 30s. She's a progressive woman. So just kind of breaking out of the mold of what you might traditionally expect the party to support.
I don't remember specifically, but I believe you and I had a conversation after the November elections, and the state assembly also had 3 new progressive young people of color, progressive candidates. And I'm sure we talked at that time about, there's something happening. I always believe that the Bronx starts everything. There really is a leftward movement in the borough of the Bronx. And you pointed out also the support of Amanda Farias, who instead of William Rivera, who the borough president supported. In the past, the borough president and the Bronx Democrats were like this. Now, of course, Ruben Diaz is not going to be an elected official, after his term is out, but there really was a shift. Here's my question, and you speculated in your article about Senator Sepulveda. It'll be interesting how that develops and who might run against him, et cetera, et cetera. I'm wondering about somebody like Jose Rivera, who has been well entrenched, Is he part of an old guard that now, and he's been challenged in the past, but the county organization always supported him. Your thoughts on that? Do you think Jamal Bailey now is really opened up the gates, so to speak, and really going to make decisions on who they think is best?
Yeah, Rivera's one to keep eyes on. Of course, he used to lead the Bronx Democratic Party. He was the party leader, the party boss. That changed in 2008 when Carl Hastie and the Rainbow Rebellion took over. Now, years later, we have Jamal Bailey, who was just an appointed leader or just elected leader of the Bronx Democratic Party last September. So there's a few generations back. Jose Rivera used to lead it. Now he's in his late 70s, maybe his early 80s. Definitely more conservative than a lot of the delegation, mostly on social matters. It's going to be interesting to see if there is some change there, that we get some youth into that seat or a woman in that seat. And that goes for the same thing for Senator Sepulveda. Kind of a problematic case there because he was arrested on domestic violence charges earlier this year. He denies that he did anything wrong, and it's the case is still working its way through the court. But look, even though he had that charge hanging over his head, Sepulveda still ran for Bronx Borough president, and he just kept on running. So I wouldn't be too surprised if he tried to run for re-election to state senate. It'll be a test for the Bronx Dems to see whether they support Sepulveda, who has kind of been a loyal, supporter of the party, or whether the Bronx Dems break with him and say that, this is just too much, this case.
You also documented the fact that the county organization did not, notice I didn't call it a machine, the county organization did not choose a candidate in the borough president's race, which is, I thought, interesting. Hard to say why. I mean, there was no real conclusive answer to that. But that also is an indication that, rather than choose, let's say, between Sepulveda, Gibson, or Cabrera, they were just going to let just a fascinating time in Bronx politics right now, other than knowing the winners of the primary and the presumed winners in the fall. We don't know much. We'll watch how time wears on that. I do want to talk about the Bronx Power 100 and city and states lists, because they are fascinating. Before we even talk about the Bronx, and yes, Gary Axelbank and Michael Maxnaby were number 52. I did check that, but the notion of these lists is fascinating. And for people who aren't familiar with them, definitely check them out. So if you're interested, let's say, in healthcare, or you're interested in, labor, and you want to know who's running the show, you get it right there. Every week there's something new. Talk to me about the infrastructure that you and Ralph Ortega have put into place to really do this. That's not an easy thing to do, to pick 100 people every week.
Sure. I don't want to take too much credit personally. I'm part of city and state, but we have some folks working full time on the lists. And of course, for every list, we talk to outside experts, and sometimes we get some freelance writers in there to really put it all together. But yes, it's great. I'm proud of this list, the Bronx Power 100. It's not just the elected officials who we all know. Of course, I think we have Carl Hastie, Assembly Speaker, at number 1. We have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez at number 2. But it's 100 people. So that goes down to the business improvement districts, journalists like yourself, people that run nonprofits in the Bronx, former elected officials. It's really a good mix of people that are movers and shakers in the political world in the Bronx. So check that out, cityandstateny.com.
Yeah, and it's a great read. Again, read about Michael Max and me. That would be great. I do want to ask you about another political thing. Eric Adams was widely supported in the Bronx. I thought that was fascinating because he doesn't come across, let's say, as Maya Wiley might have, or even Scott Stringer, who does have some roots here, and certainly many people believe that he had done a very good job as a controller. Why do you think? Do you think the crime thing resonates that well? His ethnicity resonates. He was overwhelmingly supported here. Any thoughts on that?
Sure, he's the leading Black candidate, and I think that helped him in a borough that has a large Black population. Also, there was no serious competitive Latino candidate, which I think helped. And then Adams really worked hard to fill that void. I mean, he got the endorsements of key players like Adriano Espaillat and Bronx Borough President Ruben Diaz Jr. So I think they kind of helped say that, look, Adams is the candidate of the Bronx. He's our guy. Of course, Adams has been working at this for years, really decades, focusing on becoming mayor, building up those relationships. So I'm not surprised that he did so well in the Bronx. And it really worked out for him. He carried the borough easily. Yeah.
Certainly if you look at issues that are resonating with voters, crime is, of course, right at the top. It's very interesting to have a cop be at the top, or a former cop, of course. I'm having a hard time trying to measure how he's going to do with the police force, because there has been kind of, like a little bit of a roller coaster on stop, question, and frisk and other things. And now, of course, whether it's defund or refund or what are you doing with the police? Do you have a read on what his things are, how he's going to handle policing when he presumably he becomes mayor?
It's the biggest question. Adams was a police officer, of course, and I think his general pitch is that nobody knows how to reform better than an insider. And to his credit, he was always a reformer. Even when he was in the police department, he was a loud critic of what he saw as racist tactics or racist leadership. So
one of the founders of 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement.
Yeah, exactly. And so he can play kind of quote unquote both sides here. You can look, I know the NYPD, but I also know what it's like to grow up, working class and Black and be beat up by the police, as a story he frequently tells, being a teenager and being physically assaulted by police. Yeah. So I really, Adams could go either way. It's going to be interesting to see if he does go harder on the NYPD than de Blasio, who was mostly go along to get along with the leadership there, or whether
made friends with nobody. Let's face it. Listen, Jeff, we got to run. It is always a pleasure to talk to you. Next time we're going to do a 4-hour show so we can get to all the issues and all the candidates. But for now, this will have to do. Enjoy the rest of your vacation. Thanks for taking a few minutes to be with us.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
All right. There you go. Jeff Coltin from City and State New York. Check them out at cityandstatenewyork.com. And we're going to take a break. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about growing up in the BX. Don't go away.
If you're struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit, or call toll-free at 833-511-0311. That's 833-511-0311.
Who's most at risk for coronavirus? People over 65, people with underlying medical conditions like heart disease, chronic lung disease, asthma, diabetes, people undergoing cancer treatment, and people with weakened immune systems. What should you do if you or a loved one is at higher risk? Avoid close contact with people. Avoid crowds. Stay home if you can. Wash your hands frequently. Learn more ways to protect yourself and others at coronavirus.gov.
We know that people are dealing with the health crisis, but there's also a lot of food insecurity.
We're giving out healthy food options, and that's what's key here.
If you're a senior, you have a disability, they'll actually deliver meals to you.
The residents are anxious, they're worried, they're scared, they want to be tested.
When things were happening in our community and we couldn't get the help.
There's almost a presumption of criminality that attaches to your skin color.
The site will prioritize those who are at highest risk in the population.
If you feel symptoms and you'd like to visit one of these COVID-19 testing sites here in the Bronx, you may call the State Health Department's hotline.
Important to note about this site is no reservations are needed. This is a walk-in clinic.
A lot of us are out of work and looking for something to do.
We have the machinery and the skills to make large scale of these masks and gowns.
Take care of your people. It's going to go way further than we actually can understand.
Right now, employees like myself are just adjusting to the new reality.
Reporting from BronxNet, this is Trans.
Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. We shift gears, and I was holding up this book before. The book is The Rail and What Was Really Doin in the 1960s Bronx. Boy, if only we really knew. But the guy who wrote the book is Tommy Donvan. Nice to have you with us, Tommy.
Thank you, Gary. Thanks for having me.
There's so much here. Let's just put it out. You and I both grew up in the Van Cortlandt Village neighborhood of the Bronx, where I still live. You sought your fortune elsewhere and became Dr. Tommy Donvan. But just talk to me about the motivation to write a book, and not only just a couple of memories, but you remembered much more than I could ever remember. Talk to me about what motivated you to say that this was something so special, so important, I wanted to write about it.
Well, it evolved over many years after many of my friends and I left the neighborhood. We would find ourselves conversing about talking to various friends, being at dinner parties, and telling stories about growing up in the Bronx. And to a person, these stories left people with their mouths wide open, completely mesmerized. They'd never heard of anything like this. Their neighborhoods never compared to anything like this. And for a while, I was just musing with my friends, we should write a book. And they said, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, big shot.
And I wrote a letter to a dear friend of mine in 1992, promising that I would write a book. It only took another 30 years to do that.
Well, it's a big book. You got a lot in here.
I just wanted to also expose people to our neighborhood, but personally, my personal motivation was I wanted to honor the place and the people that helped raise me, and in my opinion, saved me from a very dysfunctional household. I came to age in that neighborhood, and the friends and the people who lived there in this beautiful Jewish community made me what I am today. And I wanted to express that in the best way possible. It was a love story, really, about my neighborhood.
I do want to talk a little bit about the specifics and why the rail, which they're on the rail outside the park. You can see that there. But I do want to ask about that, which is a whole fascinating personal story, because you are not, I am Jewish, yes. You are not Jewish, and you were the rare kind of person in our neighborhood. I remember growing up and all my friends were Jewish. We went to Hebrew school together. Was that a source of difficulty for you? I mean, was it tough being like that?
At different points it was. I remember my first day at PS 95, not the first day, but the first time during the Jewish holidays when nobody was there. There was like 5 of us in school. So I was like, what kind of neighborhood is this? Where has my mother brought me? So it was a little alienating. But I didn't have much toughness. I felt welcomed. I mean, maybe there was talk behind my back that never got to my face, but I always felt welcomed, you know.
So, I want to really focus on this rail. This is an interesting thing. To me, this took the place of what people would traditionally think about the stoop. That people hang out in their building, and then they come down in the stoop, or on the steps in front of, let's say, a large complex. But in Van Cortlandt Park, you guys, more so than me, I didn't live right in this area. You guys hung out on the rail. Talk about the metaphorically or otherwise what that rail really meant.
I think your analogy about the stoop is perfect, because at the rail, depending on the time of day or the season of the year, you could find people talking sports. You could find people singing a cappella under the streetlights. You could find people smoking cigarettes, buying ice cream. It was definitely, for me and a lot of my friends, the magnetic true north of our neighborhood, where you sort of collected there like iron filings under a magnet, and then you made your plans for the day. You either went to the candy store, you went swimming, or you went to play basketball. This was the magnetic north, certainly of my generation, and I think some of the older guys before me. It was magic.
What you know, you just started to address what my next question was. So what was the magic that inspired you to write the book in the first place, inspired you to tell other people stories that they were like, my goodness. I mean, I know what it is, because we have this unique and had, I mean, things change, of course. We had this unique combination of kind of community within this large beast that was New York City. But from your perspective and what you wrote about, talk to me about what that magic was, what made it so compelling, what made you say at 6 o'clock after dinner, I'll be down in the park. I mean, that's what you said. Talk to me about what was magic about that.
Part of the magic was the blending of different generations. You know, there would be elders there. There would be guys who were in high school. There would be guys in junior high school, guys and girls, I should say. It was just the interdigitation or the exchange of like communal energy that was focused there, because it was right in front of the playground. It was a central location. You only had one street into the neighborhood to get to it. The magic was the people and the interface between multiple generations. It was absolutely fascinating. And everybody seemed welcome there. Although every once in a while, some of the older guys would say, you kids don't belong here. Yeah. Go hang out somewhere else. But by and large, this was the watering hole, the gathering place, for me and my generation and other people, the epicenter, the heartbeat of our neighborhood. And
I found, you know, I lived a little further away, still live a little further away from that spot. We found the schoolyard, the PS 95 schoolyard, to be that place where we all played stickball and all that. And we had that same kind of thing. Let's just address the writing of the book. Did you have, I mean, because it's so detailed and you had so much in there. How did you remember all this stuff? I mean, you know, I don't even know if I remember delivering papers in the neighborhood and all these other things that many of us did. I don't think I could remember the detail, you know, and there aren't movies of this, you know, films or very few photographs. Talk to me just about the writing of it.
Well, it took me 4 years to write once I started it. I started it in 2012 and I finished it in 2016. I'm not sure. I've had this question posed to me before. It just seemed like all these images came up as I charted the trajectory of my arrival in the neighborhood and my departure from the neighborhood. The details just simply rose to the surface, and I tried to capture them as quickly as I could. I also sent emails and made phone calls to people who I said, well, do you remember this? Or what happened to so-and-so? Or, you know, have you been there lately? What's it like? So there was communal discourse over certain events and certain people.
I also think that the nature of the community, which frankly is still relatively strong and, you know, secure in that way, being, you know, amalgamated houses that were right there. There, you know, we all went to day camp together. You know, we certainly played basketball on the courts there at the Van Cortlandt playground. I think that really contributed to all of it, as well as, let's be honest, the excitement of cutting the fence to get into the golf course, to do things that we probably wouldn't do out in front of the park. Right. And all that was part of it, to create a childhood that was filled with kind of the excitement of childhood, with the comfort of being in a secure neighborhood and being with a lot of the same people. I mean, that's the way it was for me growing up, and I'm presuming that you had the same. I mean, to me, that was the magic, is that we really understood this as an embracing community.
I think that's right. I mean, the fact that at the amalgamated office, the bulletins would go out, attention cooperators. Everybody knew that we were part of a larger vision, I believe. To varying degrees, people knew that this was something special. And the amalgamated cooperative movement was the heartbeat. And I think that affected all of us.
Have you had a chance to visit the neighborhood since? And I'd be curious what your impressions are. Things are different. I hear from a lot of old time Bronxites like, oh my goodness, don't go to the Bronx, whatever, which of course is ridiculous. I still live here. We still live and work. But I'm curious, do you have a sense that something survives, something is the same? I mean, do you have a feel for that?
I do. I was just there 2 weeks ago, actually. I took a walk with my friend. Every street, every corner, we were comparing notes. We ran into a friend of mine from fourth grade.
Wow.
I hadn't talked to in 50 years. We had a great chat and we were remembering each other, putting the pieces together. The neighborhood feels a lot smaller than it did when we were kids. To walk 2 blocks, to walk to Gale Place from the rail was a bit of a schlep, but now it's like
just walk down the block.
Steps away. I feel the magic there. I do. I mean, the landscape has changed dramatically. It's definitely grown over, a lot more foliage, less open space, except for the playground.
I'll give you 2 things. We're almost out of time. 2 things. One is certainly the diversity has changed. In other words, you talked about it being a Jewish neighborhood. I mean, all our Bronx neighborhoods, I mean, yes, there are little ghettos of different areas, but certainly in this community, it is, it's diverse. And also we all went to the same schools, whereas the kids now go to a lot of different schools. So that changes the dynamic. Parents are not the same, but I get the sense that in that community, much like you said, there's a lot that is the same. The one thing that I regret is they needed to add more school space, so they cut our schoolyard in half. And the 15 stickball games that were pitching, and then the one long stick game that was usually going on at the same time. That doesn't exist. You're going to write more? You're going to do more, or was this the thing that you really had on your mind?
This is the thing I really had on my mind, but I'm considering writing some books on Celtic mythology, which is my father's heritage.
Oh, okay.
We'll see how that goes.
That may go outside the Bronx. Anyway, folks, the book is The Rail, What Was Really Going On in the 60s Bronx. You've heard a lot of talk about it. This gives you all the detail and more, and a real feel for maybe some of the types of communities we can reclaim if we want. Tommy Donvan, check it out on Amazon, B&N, everywhere, right? You can pick up the book anyway.
Thank you, Gary.
Right. Tommy Donvan, say hello to all my friends that you know that I know, and that's what we'll do. Folks, a great show today. We went, from the political world to the down-to-earth grassroots world and back. And thanks to our producer, Rebecca Hemick. Our intern is Elliot Adams. Thanks to Tommy and also to Jeff Coltin from City and State New York. And guess what? We'll see you next week. Good night.